So, do we want to talk about stuff? I don't know if people maybe if we want to sort of like go around and if people wanted to sort of give the quick synopsis of of what they were, messing around with the AIs and stuff
I know it's this is bad. Remind me, where in our documents are
on
those
the agenda.
synopsis agenda? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. That makes sense. How logical. Okay. And here, so are they up here? Where?
April 9th.
Ah, okay.
All right. How about
Oh,
Rose? I was going to say,
sorry. Go ahead. Hit.
Rosemary, did you want to start with yours? Just at
I,
random, since
I
you're
did
next
post
to me.
it, and I use ChatGPT. I do have the paid version of that, and I posted it with the whole thread, including ChatGPT's comments. So it tended to focus on three main themes, um, and it identified, I think, seven themes, but and it also talked about sort of what it would sort of prioritize. Um, I use the thinking version of ChatGPT, so sometimes it will give a little more. It it opens up the black box a little more and talks about how it actually came to the conclusions. So along with how they might inform screening. Many papers mention resistance indirectly. That was one. And I said, we're looking for themes. What should we prioritize for elimination? So it did that. Uh, if it said you could exclude studies where resistance is not a primary construct, outcome, or research focus, it's only background or inferred. And then the second theme it identified was general student engagement and motivation literature. A large portion focused broadly on engagement, motivation, participation, and these studies often test teaching strategies, active learning, flipped classroom, and measure engagement outcomes, but resistance is not operationalized distinctly. The third category was instructional method studies without a resistance lens. So they said the screening implications, you could exclude studies where the focus is effectiveness of a teaching method. And again, resistance is incidental and not analyzed. Then the fourth was technology, AI, online learning adoption. These often frame resistance as usability issues, access problems, attitudes toward tech. So you have to decide whether your scope should include technology-specific resistance. If not, this is a major early exclusion category. It assumed that this was like the first stage of exclusion. I think maybe my prompt wasn't clear enough. I'm taking a course, by the way, on using AI to create basically partners. There's four categories. And one of the things that very first things he talks about is breaking the search bar paradigm and turning on the mic and just explaining, like you would explain to a colleague what you are after. Because we're so used to the Google, like you put in key
Yeah.
terms and you hit enter. But anyway, so the fifth category was assessment and testing innovations. You know, again, they're suggesting we could exclude studies that explicitly only include studies that explicitly examine resistance to assessment changes. The sixth category was identity, belonging, and affective factors. And they said include only if resistance is clearly linked to identity. So resistance as identity protection, which I thought was interesting. And then this last one, the seventh one, was mental health, stress avoidance. Exclude unless the paper explicitly connects these constructs to educational resistance. So exclude if resistance, and then it summarized everything that I just said. Exclude if resistance is implied or mentioned once without analysis. The focus of the study is general pedagogy, effectiveness, engagement, motivation broadly, technology adoption. So I won't go through everything else, it's all there. And it even said that it would do the narrowing for me, but obviously I wasn't going to ask it to do that. So it always does the like, do you want me to do this now?
Yeah. I mean, and that could be a strategy of, I was thinking from the different ways people did things where it did sort of categorize things. Like it could be like let them do a round and then do one human checker as opposed to two human checkers on it, and that would be sort of the 1.5 reviewer method for that. But yeah, so it sounds like, from what you said, that you sort of identified some major subcategories, which is, for example, which is sort of what you said at the end, particularly, right? The technology adoption, mental health, sort of avoidance kinds of things, motivation, testing pedagogies and things like that. So those can be like little buckets. And sort of what I was, when we first sort of brought this up, whenever that was, a few weeks ago, we started talking about like, should we focus on one of these buckets maybe, or as a way to narrow things down? So it seems like the AI in that case is sort of maybe legitimize that there are some of these buckets there.
Right. I asked it to identify themes and, recommend exclusion criteria, which is what it did.
Yeah, it was really, I think, nicely focused in that way, right? As you're saying, hey, tell me things that don't belong, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody else want to go next? Or if there's more comments about this?
I can jump in next.
Okay.
I noticed that, Kent, you asked for access, so I hope you have access at this point. I can give everyone access if needed. I copied mine as a link. I found it, okay, awesome. I found it difficult to figure out how I would want to share the outputs. I mean, other than doing it the way that I did. So I started copying and pasting and realizing it wasn't pulling everything, and I wanted to make sure people saw sort of the full conversation or interaction that I had within Notebook LM. I don't have paid access to it, so I was using a free version and trying to work with the notion that it's like a closed system. So it's what I'm feeding it initially, which was some of the pieces from our Google Docs. I was curating aspects that I thought would be helpful in consideration of like, what is our intention here? It's to work towards refining a research question or research questions, and also thinking about how we're going to lessen the load, if you will, in terms of our reading and our sample of articles that we have so far. So I poked around in what Nancy, Kent, and Rosemary had done as well, trying to think about how I can build from or feed in from what they did without going too deep into what they did, because I wanted to make it somewhat novel or different from what they were doing too. But so where I started was basically, again, setting up those parameters in the research questions and what we were looking at, but then calling on like what literature is supporting some of the themes or the potential categories, and what should we maybe ditch and why. So I was trying to better understand where it wasn't supporting some of the ideas. And I think some of the similar things came up to what Rosemary said, like things like instructional design and learning design, instructor behaviors and relational dynamics. And so then I started to feed it like some of the conversational pieces that we've had related to like Fink's work, and making sure it's not just an observational thing, but how do you get at the inner aspects or dimensions of the topic. And then as I went down, I was trying to reduce the scale and scope again, thinking about if we went as specific as just the dimension of assessment, for example, we were looking at resistance to assessment, or what are some of the other factors that play in there, and then how many articles, for example, would be deemed pedagogically sound or relevant as it relates to that topic. So at that point, at the towards the end, it's talking about like 22 articles being particularly relevant and helpful. So depending on how specific we get, it certainly could help us narrow in. But what I also tried to feed it was some other frameworks, such as like Schwab's Commonplaces of Curriculum, to really give it a sense of like, what do I mean when I'm talking about pedagogy? What are some of the specific dimensions I want you to look for? And it did that well, I thought, after I ensured it wasn't getting too jargony. It was very dense at first in some of its outputs, and then I asked it to use more accessible plain language, and I appreciated where it was going with the framing of the new research questions at that stage, and then some of the potential themes or categories. So those are some of the pieces that I played around with. Any questions, comments, curiosities?
No. Did you think 27 was too few, or did you like narrowing that? Like, I'm fascinated by what both of you did, because I only sort of said, how can I filter things? Like, how can I have too much stuff to do, and ended up focusing just on pedagogy. Like, it gave me very quickly a construct that I was willing to play with, which was pedagogical strength. Like, how much is this really about teaching and learning? And so I was willing to go there. It generated similar subcategories as you, but I wanted to keep them in the bucket. So I didn't know. I don't know. I like what you said. I don't really have any questions, but it seems like we're getting somewhere in terms of a way to narrow down to a manageable set of things to review. Yeah.
Why don't you go, Kent?
I did this so long ago, I don't remember everything I did.
Same. I'm so glad someone else said that.
Yeah, what I remembered was that and that's why I made that short sheet for you where I just cut and pasted some stuff, was that I
Which one?
appreciated
Which
the
one
way,
should we look at?
if you're looking
Oh,
at
the quick summary. That
yep,
one? Okay.
yep, and that's a cut and paste from a long exchange.
Okay.
The way I tend to work with these things is I actually do what you're talking about, Rosemary. I sort of have a conversation with it. I'm like, hey, so like you'll see on my transcript, my first question was like, can you even see this file? I just gave it a link to the file. It's like, no, I can't see. I'm like, okay, buddy, I'll give you the whole thing. So I gave it to it and let it told it what I was trying to do. And I don't remember what my prompt was, but I was really just trying to find a way to narrow my pool as a scoping review. So I didn't tell it our research question, but told it we were interested in resistance. But it built pretty quickly it built some categories of patterns that were in it. That's the if you're looking at my short sheet, it's the second list that's there.
Meaning on page
themes.
2?
Yeah, page 2,
Okay.
that pedagogical theme, which is really similar to what you all generated, like active learning, assessment and feedback, equity, identity, motivation, affect. I didn't explore that because there was like, yeah, those are cool. But I was more interested in its other category, which is at the top, what it called a pedagogical confidence scale, like strength of pedagogy indicator. And so that I took it, then rebooked my spreadsheet. So I'd given it the spreadsheet. It then added some columns to the spreadsheet, which I then brought back into my own space and started tabulating. Like, how many does that give me? When I asked it to do the tabulations, it would make mistakes. I'm like, you didn't get the same. So I ended up having a lot of conversations with that. I'm like, you say this number, but when I ran the tabs, I got something else. So those are all in my longer transcript, but I just liked this kind of rubric it gave me. Can
you kind of explain it? I'm looking at it, but can you, in your words, how would you explain this? Yeah.
I guess it was telling me to look at them. I will say I like Rosemary's decision tree that she generated, which might be even more useful than just this tabulation. But I just sort of like this as a way of thinking about how to look back at the articles. And like Michael was saying, I thought this might be easy to hand check. In other words, it gave me about 120, 130 articles that it said were high or moderate pedagogical emphasis. So like it's either about pedagogical technique, strategy, or design, or clearly pedagogical but less intervention driven. So like, but I hadn't had a chance to like look at the abstracts to see how it had done it. So like to see that seemed like an exercise I could look to see, okay, is this accurate, right? Like, can I sort of do my own review? Can I be a co-reviewer with it and see if I like what it's kicked out? So like if you look at my kind of all over the place, but like my spreadsheet, the pedagogical spreadsheet with hand calcs is a spreadsheet. So that pedagogical strength one,
Mhm.
I took its score. So the column on there that says pedagogical strength, I didn't check it. I took its score at face value. I haven't gone back to look at these at all to see if it seems legit. That allowed me just to do a hand calculation, which is that other tab at the bottom, and just see how many that gave me. So it had marked 16 or 17 as high and another 75 and 40 as moderate, right? So which the rest then said either low pedagogical or none.
Can you
I haven't checked those.
can you just explain this to me?
Which?
This idea of pedagogical confidence, and I'm missing it.
I can't
Yeah,
because it's this idea. So like I didn't tell it to do anything and I didn't give it any other tools. I just basically took it at face value at this point. I understood it to be saying
I mean, it's essentially, I mean, it's not like it has magic information
right,
that we don't have, right? So it's trying to infer from the abstract,
right.
like some measure, right? And it's a black box thing, right?
right.
And as you say, like chatbots aren't always good at math. They aren't
But
always good at
but what's the
arithmetic. But
I'm not even getting to the math. I'm trying to figure out what is it talking about?
I guess I'll just point to the I don't know where you are, but
I'm looking at the rubric, the your short thing, your short version, page
yep,
1.
yep.
Maybe it's because it's almost nap time. I just need a translation.
Well, I'll say on the spreadsheet, it was looking at, so what I understand these things to be doing is that they're language models. So it's looking at patterns in the language that was in the abstract. And what I understood it to be outputting to me, and as Michael says, it's a black box, but I took it as looking at those abstracts and telling me if the language looked like it was
so I mean, on page 1 of the useful from Copilot AI
yeah,
document, right? It says you have something about like 1B is pedagogical confidence,
yes.
high, and then you have sort of a description
Yeah,
of it. So is that, and that's what the
I just don't
chatbot
know
gave
what
you?
that means. I just don't know what that means.
So I guess I would, I mean, I feel like I'm trying to defend something I didn't make, so I really can't explain it beyond that, except to
But you
Means
must
say,
have
means
found it
nothing.
meaningful in some way, yeah?
I guess I'm looking at my spreadsheet, and when I look at the spreadsheet on the hand calcs tab, I've also cut and pasted something there.
Hand calcs tab. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And then from the Copilot chat there, that's Copilot. What I added conceptually and structurally. So pedagogical confidence. I added two tightly related columns that let you distinguish this is about students or this is about teaching. And then here's how this is its language around pedagogical strength. 2 points for intervention level language. We implemented course redesign, course instructional strategy, classroom intervention. 1 point for general pedagogical language, teaching, learning, assessment, active learning, feedback. This gives you a sortable continuum rather than a binary flag. Because at first it just told me like this is about pedagogy or not. And that wasn't useful enough for me. So I asked it to see if it could sort it more refined. what I'm going to say again, I liked Rosemary's decision tree because this kind of points in the same direction for me. Like, can I now review the abstracts and check to see if it has this language in it and make a kind of like it does or it doesn't, so it's in or it's out, right?
Yeah, maybe to try and connect these together a teeny bit. So, like I think Rosemary's chatbot, said, things that are really about assessment or, instructional interventions were sort of like maybe not interesting because they were really kind of usability things. But perhaps in Kent's, it's listed as high because it has a direct pedagogical whatever component. I mean, is that maybe a fair thing
Yeah,
to say? So you might be getting completely different answers from these.
it's
I don't know if
possible.
that's true or not, but it's possible.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around, like if it's tied to pedagogy or not, and the implications for us. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
I think my objective, listening to y'all, like my objective was to try to figure out what can it help me, what can it see in there that will help me get to a more manageable set of things to review without me deciding that I didn't want to talk about one of the other buckets you've been talking about. So I think I just came at it from a different
Mhm.
angle. Um, if I were working on my own, my next step would be like, okay, I didn't reread the abstracts that it's marked. And then I would probably reread those and like, do they really look different from the ones that it's marked as out of the bucket, as low, right? The ones that were high is too few. Like there's only 17 in the high category, which seemed like too few articles for me to end up with. Like that was too exclusionary for the scope. That's no scope, right? Um, but with moderate, you end up with another 115. But why would I need to look back at them? That's all I can do. That's all I can say. That's as much as I did was let it tell me what it saw as the themes, which are really similar to the two themes you all unearthed, and then found another way, like how can it decide what's in or out for me?
Mhm.
Hmm. Okay. Well, oh, before I jump in, yes, questions, comments, or whatever for Kent.
I think I only have one with Michael. I think you're right. We may have ended up with really different things, but now I'm really curious about the subset of Rosemary's compared to the subset of mine. Like how many of them are basically the same, right? Or did we end up with a different you had 160, I think I have 145, right? So like how many of them are
Mhm.
the same?
And the subset, I was still trying to get to the right places. Rosemary's subset is on oh, they're not numbered. Let me add numbers real quick. Page, where'd it go? Page 9, is that correct? In Rosemary's,
Yes.
and you're talking about the explicit resistant 169. Is that what you're talking about? Okay, okay, okay. I'm caught up. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. Shall I share what I did and barely remember also because I did it right after? And I love how mine has I made that little spot for Nancy's thoughts. And if you
There are
there
no
we
thoughts.
go. We go. But what I did was I highlighted, so it's not as helpful, but okay. So as you can see, if you look in the margins, oh, you know what? Let me go close my door. There were people working in here until just now. Let me go close my door. Okay, sorry. They were working on the air conditioner just left. Okay. As you can see in the tabs or whatever on the left, I played around with the paid version of ChatGPT, the free version of Claude. We have Gemini here, and I have a paid version of Perplexity. Because I have no life. So I decided to play with multiples. And I just put the whole transcript. So there's way too much here. Meg, I'm so sorry to hear that you went through all this. It was a lot.
No, no, just literally skimmed
Oh,
kind of
good.
through
Okay,
each
because
one.
it was a lot. So if you click the Chat GPT first, I mean, you can read whatever you want, but I'm going to invite you to scroll to page. Just a minute. 21. And I just kind of like Kent was saying, I just kind of had a conversation with it. And I guess, what was I doing? I think I was looking for kind of like we had done in our previous conversation, themes. Like, what are the relevant themes? I didn't do the kind of interesting quantification and kind of the interesting stuff that y'all did. I just went for themes. And so if you look at just the highlighted part on page 21, this is a set of themes that I ended up with ChatGPT. I wonder if pedagogical triggers of resistance is similar to the pedagogical confidence. I don't know. I'm still, yeah, anyway, okay, let it go. So there's that. I think those are interesting, and you'll see by the last line that's highlighted there, I was really leaning into we're trying to empathize with. Um, so I like the layer 2 for what it's worth, but layer 1 is kind of those buckets, I guess, that we had talked about before. Let me look ahead because I think I highlighted something else. Did I? Oh, and then if you scroll down to page 44, this is different because I just kept going because, was it Rosemary who said that ChatGPT, it's kind of like trying to get you addicted to heroin. It just, at the end of every output, it's like, if you want, I can do this extra special thing just for you. And so I'm like, sure, okay. Anyway, so after many more back and forth on page 44, you see this is a different kind of bucketing that's just interesting.
Mhm.
And again, I kind of like this. I don't have any strong opinions, let me just say that. But what I do like about this is that it's kind of from the students' perspectives, for what that's worth. Okay, that's Chat GPT. That's what I kind of liked in what it did. And there may be more, but it was a while ago. But that's kind of the high level stuff. Oh, someone's highlighting that little thing on page 46. So that might be worth just
Mhm.
oh, that was Meg. Yeah, just kind of the idea of expectation mismatch, increased effort, social exposure, that those are the motivations, which is, I think, interesting and useful given our ultimate goal. But yep.
Right.
So there's ChatGPT. If you click Claude on the left, again, there's just too much. Oh, actually, no, I didn't go very far with this. There are 3 pages here. You'll see the highlight on page 3 as kind of a different way of bucketing that may be collapsible into fewer buckets, but there's that. Yeah, I'm certain we could collapse those into fewer buckets. Oh, was someone saying something?
I'm realizing, listening to you now, Nancy, I'm realizing that maybe the answer of what they meant, what I took pedagogical strength to mean was how much was this article really about pedagogy? Um, that's how I was understanding what it was telling me. Not that it's like strong pedagogy or good pedagogy, but how much
That
is this
makes
thing
sense.
about this?
Yeah.
So
And I
then it would
guess,
be in or out. Because I really think I really like you've identified similar patterns that seem to be like the next step, which is like, well, what are students actually resistant to? Why are they resistant? I really like your cross-cutting sort of pieces. Like, okay, they're resistant to these kind of pedagogies, but what's the cross-cutting bit? But I was stuck at the first phase, which is like, yeah, but I don't want to read 1,000 articles to figure that out. I
yeah,
want to read
yeah,
100, right?
yeah.
And so I was like, how can I keep good stuff in the pool? And so that's what I found useful about pedagogical
Okay.
strength was how much
That's
was this article really
helpful.
about teaching and learning,
That's
right?
okay. That's
Yeah.
helpful. I think I was stuck on, I don't know if this is even relevant, but just I think with the pedagogical confidence, I was stuck on, are we wanting to focus on pedagogy? Because I was kind of thinking about empathizing with the students. So I think that's why I was stuck, was like, if we filter by pedagogy, what are the implications for the students?
Got it.
That's neither here nor there, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Oh,
I
Meg,
think
yeah.
from our last conversation, if I recall, it was really about focusing on the holistic experience of the student, the learner, in addition to the pedagogical dimensions of the experience. And for me, with the closed system, with the Notebook LM, the fact that I have to feed it things, when I'm asking about pedagogical dimensions, I'm trying to feed it some of our frameworks and some of our conceptions of what learning and teaching are, so that
Mhm.
it's not, when it's actually calculating what's relevant or not, then I'm actually feeding it some of the pieces that are informing our work, intentionally. So I think some of the differences are showing up too in terms of a more
Oh,
open
interesting.
system like some of you are using versus me coming at it in a different way and curating and saying this, and this to
Yeah,
inform how you're conceptualizing these things. I think there's definitely advantages and disadvantages to both.
yeah.
And
So interesting. I'll just finish mine quickly. If you go to Gemini, let's see, and scroll to, there's a whole bunch of gobbledygook in here. Page 9, for instance, this is starting to look similar. I mean, we're starting to, but we're seeing lots of kind of similar types of categories and categories that can be collapsed into categories. And so again, that's on page 9. Is there something else in here? Nope, whole bunch of gobbledygook. And then I don't even remember what Perplexity was doing, but I didn't highlight anything. I, I, yeah, it didn't really do it didn't resonate with me. So I'll just leave it at that. Period. And I don't know, maybe the coding table on page 5 is helpful. I don't know. I find that less helpful. I don't know. That doesn't bring things together for me. But anyway. So Meg, something you said a couple of minutes ago is helpful. At least, I mean, for my thinking, you just said at our last conversation or whatever that was, we talked about making sure that we capture the kind of the whole experience, the holistic experience of students, along with the relevant pedagogies. You said it better than that, but that's just that's helpful for me. Yeah.
great. I'm having trouble figuring out how to give you and Rosemary access, just because it says it's not supported by your institution. to give you that
Oh,
Yeah,
access.
no
that's
So I've
weird. We
tried,
have it here.
We
We
have it
use
here.
it
yeah,
here.
I've been trying to put your emails in directly to share it that way as opposed to a link that I've copied, and it's not accepting that either.
Oh,
So I'm going to have to, I might try and copy everything into a Google Doc after this and share it that way.
okay.
Okay.
It's not pretty,
Interesting.
but
Yeah, because we have it. Huh.
yeah. It might be the Notebook LM specifically that's not, it doesn't have the same
Or it's
access
because we're
option.
being such jerks in the States, and you
Security.
Canadians are like, I see what you're doing. I mean, never mind.
Not all of us.
No, correct.
All right.
8 million of us were on the right side of history last weekend.
You what? What?
I was just saying something politically
Oh, wow.
Were you
incorrect.
asking if we were at the No King's
Oh,
March? Is
I
that what you
know,
were
I said
asking?
8 million of us were
Oh, 8
last
million. Okay.
weekend. We're on the right side of history.
Yeah. Okay, so what do we do with this information?
So, so Rutwa has
Oh,
just
Oh,
posted
oh.
something.
yeah,
Yeah,
I can, yeah, no
Rutwa.
worries. I can, so I'll full disclosure, the ChatGPT version that I have, um, it always self-stout itself because of the customization that I've done. Um, so it will always like, it's like, are you sure? And then it will be like, not completely, and then so on and so forth. So you kind of see in these 7 pages. So I started off with just feeding it the full like spreadsheet with the 440 records. Um, and it kind of came up with these 7 themes. I don't think there was too much of like it wasn't something that was like too profound. Like I think what we said about some of these things, they are all there. I didn't really particularly find anything that's too useful. Um, and maybe one of the things that I tried to do probably on page 4 is some of the keywords that it tries to recognize based on kind of these 5 codes that it's tried to put in the code book. Um, Maybe what is different is like the identity based and the sociocultural resistance category that it came up with. But again, I'm not sure if this is too profound of a finding. Um, but yeah. So even after the code book, you'll see like not completely like I'm reasonably confident.
Yeah.
Those are the useful provisional themes.
Yeah, I think it's nice. It's nice to have sort of those keywords as to give you a illustration of what it is that they're talking about. Like how does, particularly like, I mean, because it's sort of that black box thing, right? Where it's sort of like, how did you determine that this was about pedagogy or something, right? And then if it's saying here's some of the bits that seems to be indicative, then you
Hmm.
can say, okay, do I buy this or not, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like some of these things pointed out were like, keywords that we did the search on, or they're, like it's like, well, this looks like it's all about, whatever higher education and not K-12, and you're like, good, right? So it was able to recognize some of those things that we put into the sample. All right, so now where do we go from here? Now we can go back to Nancy's comment. Where do we go from here with this?
Well, I feel like there's a lot of similar themes across all of these AI generated categories, themes, whatever you want
Yeah.
to call it. Seems like there's quite a bit of familiarity when I'm reading everybody else's list. It's like, yeah, That's just another way of saying what it said over here.
All right. So what is this? How does this, whatever, what implications does it have for filtering or narrowing or focusing, whatever it is we want to do with our research question, with our sample, whatever? Do we have a feel of like this is whatever, or does it make it easier to sort of chunk through the sample that we have if you know, for example, like if the AI would like put them into big boxes, right? And then do we feel like it'd be easier to process if we're just like looking at all the active learning ones first, or or if we had some more of those explicit exclusion suggestions, like, is this just about, resistance to a new technology? Like maybe we should just like cut all those out, and maybe that would be a fast process to.
And I think that most of these chat models did that for us, like in mine. It said, here's a major source of overscreening,
Mhm.
another major category. And then I liked, my favorite category was smaller but still noisy.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's the K-12. Smaller but still noisy.
Yeah.
I'm just pulling my highlighted stuff out into one place just so because I'm feeling very, I kind of need to see stuff together. So I'm just trying to do that. Let's see.
But yeah, I mean, because like, so for example, like from Rosemary's thing, right? They talked about sort of like lack of engagement. Like that was something that I think we generally tried to filter out, but I know we had questions about like what's that, so do we go back? I mean, because we could potentially like, do like a keyword search for maybe some of these exclusionary terms and highlight them, in confidence, or go to them in confidence and see, um, you know, put them back into the whatever, into the hopper to be sort of screened out. Or just like some of those, some of the folks that did the lists of include and exclude, actually just look at those specifically and try to do a quick.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't
I
figure out the best next move. Like, I really like all of the themes and patterns. I feel like it's set us up better for the write-up of like what do we find in the review, right? Um, but I can't figure out what the best strategy is for deciding which ones to knock out.
Mhm.
So would it be help? So let me tell you what I'm doing and seeing if it might be helpful for all of us to do this. I'm taking just the stuff that like what I might clumsily call the best findings, the conclusions, the stuff that really made sense to me, and I'm pulling it out and putting it in a separate document so I can see it isolated. And then I kind of want to look at those and see where's the overlap and what's um, complementary and what's something else. So I feel like that's where my mind is that we have a lot of really different good ideas, some of which seems to offer some overlap, but I don't have a good sense of what that is yet. Some of which might offer a complementary view. Yeah.
Well, I like Rosemary's, example because it really was focused on filtering, right? On, what do we have in there that really isn't central to what it is we're trying to do. And and it has sort of like and on two levels, right? One, it has the, these are, these are sort of like keywords, or the, and these are guides for the review process, right? So like, and including, I guess, whatever in that second round where it's like this decision tree, right? So basically what that does is, adds some more items to the like exclusion list, right? Because before it was just really on, is it K-12? Is it US? Is it Canada? Is it whatever, right? Like those, it was very broad. And so I think that this, that's the kind of, maybe next step in terms of restricting the kinds of studies. And that was sort of something that I was sort of mulling over in the back of my mind about, what is it, what is it that we, care about? And I think maybe like, early on in our discussions, we were sort of like, well, we're not exactly sure what it is we're looking for, right? And we're letting the literature tell us, what these concepts are, what these ideas are, what these treatments are. And so I think now we sort of have, some of those initial things, right? And so that gives us a chance to say, okay, like, for example, I think we included a lot of articles that where resistance was mentioned sort of in the first part of the abstract where it was like students are resistant to stuff, right? But really it was about, as sort of the chatbots have said, right? Really it's about here's my cool intervention and people liked it and they did well, right? And so that's really the central piece of it. And we're like, well, maybe they talk about resistance, but maybe we shouldn't be like whatever, erring too that much on the side of, maybe something, maybe there's something there, and I know like at the beginning we're like, well, cast a broad net. And now it's like, okay, well, maybe not cast a broad. Um, so I think maybe just that, right? So like maybe we could have, as a way forward for the next step, right? So maybe we could come up with a few more exclusion criteria and then sort of redo the title abstract. And then if we, and again, if we tried to make it, somewhat fast, if we have like an AI do one round of that to say, okay, please exclude things that do this and this and this and this, right? Then that would give us some candidate things that maybe we could have one person review and confirm that that's what it is and sort of trust each other on that basis.
Can I ask a
That makes
process question?
Mhm.
When you say run them through with these new exclusionary terms, are you talking about the total,
No,
or are you just talking about
because
the
we've already
440,
excluded,
440 that we have left?
yeah, we've already excluded the ones that are, so that was according to the broad definitions, they were already there. So this
So
is
we
just
would just
within
be running it
those,
on those 440, right?
right? Yeah.
That's what I thought, but I just want to make sure I understood.
I think I like that description a lot, Michael. I like this decision tree. Every time I read it, it sort of feels like it would knock out things that are too tangential, right? That are, like you say, mention it but aren't really about it. It's not a central construct or concern. Um, so do we have two people look at them again, or one of us and then check?
Well, I guess if we're not trying to do the other problem, of course, is just like, okay, we'll do another layer of title abstract, and then we will do the full text
Yeah.
we've just added more. Well, to the extent you can get rid of a bunch of stuff in a faster step, then it's not necessarily, but otherwise you sort of feel like, oh, so we didn't finish the first step. Um, so yeah, I was trying to think of a way to accelerate the process, So I think like
Did,
and it is, I mean, it is true, like once you've calibrated something, and in theory, and and feel like that you have good reliability, right? Then, depending on the research, on the groups, they might decide that, basically you do a test sample, but then you have one person do, do chunks of the rest of the sample, right? If you're like, we've got good, we're locked down on things that are and aren't, a part of it, then we sort of trust that, well, that's a pretty consistent, process. So we'll get the same general answer.
So I think back to Kent's point, I think it was Kent that you said this will enhance the reliability because we're seeing the patterns and the themes emerge again and again. So that integrated reliability is there, but we all use different tools or took very different approaches or had different, you know, dimensions of that. So I guess, are you getting at, Michael, as a next step, if we want to increase it even further, like the protocols might be similar or a process that we engage in would be a shared one? Is that what you're implying?
Yeah, so
Okay.
so if we made some explicit new exclusion criteria,
Okay.
and then we could even label, right? So there's when we were doing the review, there's like a drop down box for like reasons for exclusion, which I forget if that's at the title abstract or just the full text phase, um, but basically you can tag it so that if you do at some point want to query that, then you would have that information, right? So you could say,
Yeah.
is this real? Was this really a legitimate thing that we did, or do we want to, in some sense, grab it back or not?
Yeah, because I feel like this also highlights our use of EDIC and EMIC codes. So, like drawing from the literature, right? Like having that dictate some of the things that we see, but then also our own experiences and the questions we're asking through the prompts are also based on our lived experiences that we're bringing to that, or the specific conceptual frameworks or ideas from our text to date. I think that's maybe an important dimension to think about, because when I think about towards the end of my time with Notebook LM this round, I was, you may notice, like I was starting to funnel based on my own interests and the things that I cared about and what I was seeing emerge. And I was really fascinated by some of the assessment pieces. So I could have spent a lot more time getting even more specific, but I was starting to channel it into that direction, not only based on the patterning, but where I saw some substantive, that's an easy word to say, pieces come through in the lit that was there from the CSV file. So from the sample that we had, what are some of the questions that are emerging of interest as it relates to what is in the literature that is contemporary as well? So, I mean, all those factors were leading me towards that piece. And I would be curious, like, for others, were there specific themes that were, like, I know, Rutua, you said, like, there was nothing too surprising or shocking. I would say I feel the same way, but I also feel like it started to direct my energy and I started to feel more inspired by a few things because of this process. So I was just curious if that was the case for anybody else or what came up for you.
I would say similar.
Okay.
I felt like some of the kind of coming up with themes um, just kind of solidified, I think, what we'd been talking about, some of the observations we'd had. And if and when we get to that stage, it sounds like we're not quite at that stage. We're going to do the decision tree, which I like. I had to kind of read through it. Maybe some of those themes, that's where we'll get to, okay, here, we're not going to deal with that theme.
Right.
Um, but seeing those themes, even if they're articulated in different ways, made me feel like, okay, I think there's where we can make some decisions about which topics are we most interested in or might have the meatiest literature to dig into or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing that, Nancy.
Yeah, it is interesting because, like, one of the purposes of the scoping review is to give you the big theme, like, what's happening out there, right? And then if we're saying you don't care about those, is sort of like, I mean, you've narrowed your question, but it's sort of like, um you sort of feel like it's sort of less, I guess, it's a more scoped scope that
Yeah.
you're looking at. And so there's that balance between, we're trying to do a survey, but we're not trying to be overwhelmed by the survey we're doing, right?
And Michael, the writing process for our other scoping review is letting me see things that hadn't fully become clear to me before then, which is that when we write this up, we will probably say this. We'll say we started with all of these themes and then we narrowed to these. So we're still sharing that broad scoping and then articulating that then we narrowed to these topics, which for readers who are interested they'll at least know that there are these other topics in the literature that we didn't explore deeply.
And, um, I think, like, as we said, sort of like the themes also, and maybe this is a little bit slightly orthogonal, but like, so you sort of talked about the themes were similar across, some of these chatbots. So I think it'd be interesting to like potentially interesting to like put that up against whatever, sort of that resistance model and say, is this reproducing all of it, some of it? Are we sort of rediscovering the that thing? Because I mean, certainly there are a lot of themes that sounded pretty familiar from that respect, right? It's sort of like, past experiences or whatever. um so I don't know if that would also be an interesting, back, like, if we're trying to, and we sort of said that in proposal, like, if we're trying to characterize, this literature, is that the backbone, right? And I think and then again, like in our other scoping review, right, we ended up finding some frameworks, I guess, right, to put, or questions to subdivide those topics into, right? Like, here's, you know, it's, as opposed to making our own categories, we can use somebody else's categories if they're if particularly if they make sense, right? And or or say, this is the stuff that fits into the standard framework, this is the stuff that maybe doesn't, right? And that would be sort of the new information. So I don't know what that, like I said, it was a little bit orthogonal to the rest of the conversation, but
You like that word.
yes, it's a math thing.
The one thing, and I think this is a given, but I'll just say it just because the literary person in me is squirming a little bit. Just in the decision tree on page 6 at the very beginning, I just want to make sure that we add all of our terms in like a nuanced definition of, or a nuanced understanding of resistance. And I know we're all thinking that, but it's just itching me a little bit,
Right.
letting
The
the
first
bot make that decision without that nuance. But yeah, we're all on the same page. I'm just itching.
the first rule of chatbots is always don't let them tell you.
Yeah.
Because like I said, like, we sort of talked about, where is he coming up with this stuff, and we're just like, we have no idea, right? So sometimes it is just making it up. I I firmly believe sometimes it is just making it up.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
So, oh yeah. So I did just for my brain, um, uh, on the kind of the main page of where I had the my stuff where I had the transcripts where I was supposed to put my summary thoughts. I copied and pasted kind of the highlighted pieces in the ones that I did that I thought were worth thinking about. And then I was able to do that with Rutois and then Rosemary's. And then I can't access the Notebook LM. And then can't, let's see, is there something? I don't know what. Oh, no, here. This is where I'll copy from yours. Okay. And just to let you know my process, I need to kind of go away and think about these. Not that it's going to affect this kind of decision tree thing, but I want to think about these themes and stuff. So if that's helpful, there you have it.
And I agree with what you were saying about letting the chatbot make a decision.
Yeah.
You know, I always think if it's a place to start, it's definitely not the place.
Yeah. Yeah. Meg, is there anything from yours that you would consider kind of like these, the kind of helpful summary? Is there anything you would add to this document?
I can pull a few things. I've cut and pasted the full thing, but it's not including the prompts. It doesn't cut and paste the prompts in there, and I think that's an important piece. So I'll have to go back and add those so that you and Rosemary have access, but Kent and Michael have full access to the full piece. I would probably pull out a few critical pieces. It's quite a bit longer,
Okay.
the piece that I've included. So yeah, I'll
Okay.
go back through and pull out the most critical parts.
Okay.
Just so you know, Meg, I couldn't get into your Google Doc either, so I requested access for that.
Okay.
Google
let me look at
Doc.
that now.
Let's see.
It's in the chat.
Oh, same. Yep.
So what's our next step in terms of actions and deliverables and stuff?
I heard that whip crack. I definitely heard it.
What I think I'm hearing is that our first next step is that decision tree. Now, I don't know what we do with that. I don't know how we operationalize that, but that I think is what I'm hearing is the kind of activity next step. A conceptual next step is, at least for me and anyone else who's interested, I kind of want to do some thinking about these themes that I've copied and pasted as kind of parts of our summaries. But that's more nebulous and not so much, yeah. So how do we operationalize the decision tree? I genuinely am not sure.
I don't know either. I feel sort of stumped, and I also feel like I feel like I might be holding the group up. Like, do you want to focus more on those thematic areas, those sub areas? Because I guess my concern is that the full 400 should already have resistance in them to some extent. They made it through our first pass, right? And so we're trying to find some way that makes them richer. So does it make sense for us to walk through the decision tree again, or sort of see what it produced and what we want to add to that? And then, Michael, is there a way we need a mid step, right, where we do the abstract title screening again, but only with that subset?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, yeah, that's sort of like, yeah. So
And I also like the idea that you mentioned of maybe just one person. So we don't have to go through the extra step of managing conflicts.
yeah. Yeah, because I think I mean, for example, if you look at, if you look at the tree, where it says, does tell abstract explicitly use the terms, I imagine pretty much that's going to be there. Um, is it a research focus? Is there an outcome being measured? Is it theoretically explored? So, and it has the examples like students were initially resistant, but, right. So, and I think that's a phrase that we probably did include as a fair amount of the time, right? Where it was sort of like, well, they mentioned that as part of the problem statement. And so um,
I do like
like,
it. Yeah. I was going to
oops,
echo what you said. I like its language at step 2, which is like it's a construct or it's central to it in some way, not an incidental.
And
yeah,
theoretically explored. That I would worry if that wasn't there. That kind of captures some of what I might worry about because I don't want it to be just like studies. I want to make sure we include theoretically explored. So
Mm.
that satisfies me. Yep.
yeah. Yeah, and I guess I mean it is a little bit, and I think I mean it's the thing that we spent all this time discussing, right? Like, when it says, is resistance defined or measured in the abstract, right? Like, which is sort of like one of those exclusion criteria. So, that's, it's an abstract. So I don't know. The other approach, I guess, would be to include these, but in a full text um, review. I mean, and that's really, the full text is where you find out whether whatever, whether they just mention it in passing as sort of motivation for, whatever, just sort of throwaway lines, or if they actually deal with it.
So our
Um,
next, now I've got Covidence open. So our next step would be the full text review, and that is still an inclusion exclusion choice moment. Is that
yes.
right? So maybe
Yeah.
we use the decision tree at this point, which would allow us to look. We could agree, like just look at the first 1,000 words of the darn thing, right? Like, um, scan the first part of the article. That would give us a little more than the title and the abstract to look at to see if within the introduction or the conceptual frame they've put resistance as a core concept. We might be able to answer that question on the decision tree with more confidence if we're looking at more of the text.
And it seems like to me that in terms of the decision tree, we could skip step 1 because we've already done that.
Right.
It didn't have the word resistance in it anywhere, wouldn't be in there. So we can start with step 2, which I think is a good thing to ask. Is this really about resistance in a real way? So is it the focus? Is it being explored conceptually or theoretically? I mean, those are, to me, important inclusion criteria.
Right. Yeah, I guess, so the other, yeah, I mean, step 3, I think, is one of the things where I think those are open questions that we could decide, so for example, is this about whatever? Is this about general
Oh,
engagement?
right.
Is this about a specific instructional method? Is this about technology adoption? Is this
Here
about,
are the
is this,
themes or the buckets.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Right.
So I think that, I mean, that will make a bigger difference in, of the ones that are left, kind of excluding things out, like, um, yeah,
And are we in agreement to what Chat GPT is telling us? So
yeah,
do we want to exclude the general engagement and motivation category, for example? I mean, it does it does say that that's overrepresented. But you can't trust everything it says.
I
Right.
would say no. Here's where I want to have just a little bit of time. It won't take long. I just need
Okay,
to think about the buckets or themes or,
Yeah.
these kind of high level summaries. That's helpful because I think that's where we'll put those buckets and be able to make some of those. At least that's kind of what I'm sensing is where that goes.
and I would feel more comfortable knowing that we had agreed
Right.
on what that inclusion or exclusion criteria is at this stage, rather than just saying, okay, let's just all jump in there and do
Yeah.
things. I want to make sure that I understand what we're actually including and what we're actually trying to get out. Because, yeah, we all agreed 440 studies was more than we could manage.
So, in terms of operationalizing this, so I know Nancy's good at conceptual things, so
Thank you for that.
and wants to
Definitely not good at the other stuff.
and wants no, I wasn't saying there was a deficit. I just saying there was a surplus.
I'm saying there's a deficit. No, you
So-
wouldn't say that. Yeah.
So, but maybe you can make a first pass and give us sort of a prototype list.
Yeah,
or,
and
and then we can sort of react to it.
I'm thinking of just a synthesis, not making any decisions, just a synthesis of those kind of high level summaries that I copied and pasted into that first tab in mine. Meg, do you know if yours has something like that?
I guess there's those little charts, whatever they are, flow diagrams or something. I don't know what they are. I have a hard time navigating it.
Yeah.
You're not coming through.
Oh,
Oh, okay, you are.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
little soft.
It was quiet. Yeah.
1 second. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like I have everything that I cut and pasted was from the chat part of it. So I'll reshare that, but you want me to just focus on the synthesized bits, right? Or the prompts? Or
Is
what?
there, yeah, is there, like if you look on the first tab in mine, I think I would describe these as when a chat has produced a useful set of themes.
Okay.
I think that's what this is. Does that kind of sound like a good summary description for everyone else? Like what I did, I copied from 3 of mine, and then there's the let's see, let me add page numbers. Then I did that from Root was. Let me add page numbers so I can tell you.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll pull the most relevant piece, what I deem as
Okay.
the most relevant pieces, and send them to you.
Okay. That's on page 3 is Root was, and then Rosemary's starts also on page 3. And then Kent, yours is on page 4. And so I'll make a little spot down here for Meg. And is that everybody? Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, so Meg, once you paste some stuff in there, I can do that. I can play with those and come up with just a synthesis and share that. And then that will, our conversation about that or our decisions about that will inform step 3. Was that step 3 of the decision tree? Yes. Yeah. And that's where we can start doing some, we're going to leave this theme out.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the other item was the Stilly conference. I'm trying to remember. Did you say you were going?
Is this the one in Saskatchewan and not
No,
Hamilton?
it's Hamilton.
Oh, the Hamilton one? Yes, I would like to go to that one.
Okay, so you're planning on going to that one?
Yes.
Okay. And then was anybody else? I felt like there was a large a large number of no's accumulating. So I
But I
just
will
wanted
be
to,
going to ISOTL.
yeah.
So
Okay.
we want to connect there.
I'll be in Spain, so
Okay.
Wow.
All right. So I can try and do that then. I was if I would well, so I was sort of like sketchy about whether to go or not. If I was the only one, then it probably wouldn't make sense. But if if we have at least two people at the table, then maybe I would feel better. Okay. Good to know. All right. I think that was it. Are there any other things we wanted to talk about? Questions, observations, anything?
it's fun. I had fun doing this.
Mm.
I'm sorry I seem to have lost all of it because I had a lot of fun when I was doing it. This is just interesting stuff. Yeah.
I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
And I appreciate everybody's methodologies and things because I'm kind of new to this and I'm also mentoring a student who's doing a scoping review. So like as soon as I learn it here, I pass it on to her.
You are
The-
working with the right person wherever
Yeah.
he is.
Oh.
Yes.
I was going to start asking
The
you questions
protocol
since
that you
you're
listed, that you put in our homepage, I sent that to her first thing. It's like, okay, this is Covidence, check it out.
yeah.
But
Oh,
yeah, I really do enjoy that.
yeah, it's good. You said you were working on one, so I was like, oh, we have an expert that was just hiding. Okay.
Work on it.
That's all I have, I think.
All right.
What's
Everybody have
our
a great rest of your day. Oh, I'm sorry. Ken, I didn't
I was
mean
just going to
interrupt.
clarify what our timeline is. I feel like we're behind all the rest of the groups a little bit, and so I'm eager to move, but I want to give Nancy plenty of time to do the kind of clarifying that she needs to do. So I guess I'm just wondering, when do I
It
need to
won't
mark
take
off
long.
some time to review things?
Our
It
next
won't,
meeting is on the 23rd. That was the one that I was a little concerned about because we have a major event on the 24th and I'm out until the 21st. So I'm back for 2 days and then we have this big event. But I think we better make that because I have to be in the meeting to start the meeting. So that's our next meeting.
and it won't take me very long. Once I have Meg's stuff, it won't take me very long to do a synthesis. So what do we want to do during our next meeting? Because I could share the synthesis ahead of time, and then we could make decisions in our next meeting, or we could make
Yeah.
decisions asynchronously before then. It won't take me long. But yeah, what do we want to do on our next meeting? I think that might help.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we have something that seems clear before the meeting, then we could even get started. So that we'll have something, that we sort of crank through before we get together. So that again we can we can sort of have conversations about if we're implementing this. But that might be a little too ambitious too.
And what do you
So,
mean when you say something that's clear?
just, so the usual sort of, collaborative, collective understanding about what it is that this means that we're doing in this stage, right? So like if we have the process in place, we can test it before the meeting by doing some articles or whatever, and then be able to like have a conversation about, okay, is this clear? Do I understand this? Do we understand this? Does it make
So
sense?
so are you thinking so I can do the synthesis. It won't be a long thing that the synthesis is. And then I can send it out, and then we kind of asynchronously vote, kind of annotate and say, I'd be okay with not doing this bucket. I'd be okay with not doing this bucket before the meeting, so that in the meeting we can use the remaining buckets and test some articles. Is that kind of what you're
Yeah.
thinking?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Okay. Do people, if within the next few days I get you the synthesis, which I don't think will be long, right? I think ultimately that's going to collapse a lot of longer lists. If I get that to you in the next few days, would you be able to asynchronously just kind of say, I'm less interested in this bucket, I'm really interested in this bucket?
Yes, I would, as long as it comes before the 18th.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
when I'm
yeah.
leaving town.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm thinking, what's today? Where's this?
Thursday.
Thursday, the 9th. Yeah, yeah, in the next few days.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that.
And what I'll do is I can put it in a Google Doc, and then we can just use the comments or something just to annotate. We don't have to have kind of long justifications unless we want them, but I think it's just a matter of, let's keep this bucket. I could let this bucket go, something like that. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Sounds good.
Meg, if you'll email me when you put the stuff on page 4 in the document, then I'll get started. Great. Great. Excited.
All right. Sounds like we're good to go.
Sounds like fun.
This was a productive exercise. When you brought
It
it up, I was
was.
like, I don't know if that's going to help us, but oh, it did.
Yeah.
It was productive.
It's
cool.
pretty incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
I'm going to end the meeting, everybody. Have a lovely
Okay.
day.
Okay.
Here.
Bye.
Bye.